Sometimes on some issues I have a great difficulty relating to my fellow common man. One of these issues is the widely held belief that God created the earth, the miraculous virgin birth of Jesus and his subsequent sacrifice for the sins of all mankind, and that the failure to believe in this is punishable by eternal torment. What utterly mystifies me about this belief, or rather, these beliefs, is that they're considered common sense. When I tell people that I'm not a Christian, their response is usually shock. It seems that my peers think that this story is easy to believe and even hard to disbelieve. The fact of the matter is, in my opinion, quite the opposite. If this story is true, it is by far the greatest example of fact being stranger than fiction. To say the least, it's a wild tale. To say the most, it's absurd, self-contradictory, and morally reprehensible. The story goes a little something like this. A long time ago, about 15 billion years, there was an all-knowing, all-powerful, all-loving consciousness called God, just hanging out in the void. He got bored or something, and made some slaves called angels, who would do whatever he asked because they didn't have free will. Well, except for Satan, and his angels who rebelled against God, who I guess had to have free will. Well anyways, God gets bored of his toys and decides to make new ones. These ones will have free will and can do whatever they want, as long as it's not what he doesn't want, in which case he'll torture them. So it makes the world, the animals, rocks, man, etc., etc. God, being the smart, all-knowing fellow that he is, puts at the center of his creation a magic tree with magic fruit, which is forbidden. This tree is called the Tree of Knowledge. Knowledge, I guess, being evil to Christians. And in its general area, he puts an evil, multi-legged snake, whose whole goal is to convince humanity to eat the fruit, which eventually he does. On top of this, he creates human nature in such a way that mankind will inevitably eat from the Tree of Knowledge. And of course, once man eats of the tree, he brings sin into the world. And this is all part of God's plan, because keep in mind he's omniscient, so he knows everything that's going on. So finally, when his plan comes to fruition, what's his reaction? He gets really, really super pissed. So he kicks man out of the garden, curses them, curses the entire planet, takes the poor snake's legs all away and makes him eat dust. Poor fellow. Which is a real bummer, because the snake is just doing what it's supposed to do, just following orders. I guess even God doesn't accept the Nuremberg defense. Alright, so mankind's cursed, the world's fallen, we're all screwed, right? Well, fortunately for us, God's loving and he's merciful, so he cuts us a little slack, right? Well, not quite, not exactly, and not for quite a long time. God waits until about 2,000 years ago, which is a long time to wait considering that our species has been on the planet for about 100,000 years. So I guess God didn't think that humanity's salvation was that important. He put it on the back burner, on the back of his list, and did other stuff for 100,000 years. But let's forgive God's incredibly slow reaction to mankind's suffering and skip right to his great plan to save us all from our own sin, which damns us all to hell. His plan is, brace yourselves, he's going to impregnate a virgin without having sex with her, and then have her bear a son, which is both God and a being that is separate from God, which makes him his own father and his own son. So this guy, who is both his own father and his own son, saves us how? It goes a little something like this. He sacrifices himself to appease himself, to grant us pardon from the very system of all-incriminating judgment that he himself created and continues to apply to us even though it damns all of creation. A loophole, basically. A loophole. That's the best a super being can pull off. But wait, it gets better. In order to be eligible for this loophole, you have to pledge your allegiance to this father-son guy. By telepathically telling him that you belong to him and that you're super sorry for breaking his crazy rules, like, not having lustful thoughts, which is basically a thought crime. You also have to love him, which is a little weird. I guess Christians think that God has a self-esteem issue. It's also strange that the Abrahamic God is such a hard-on for human and animal sacrifice. Why is God so into blood and the smell of burning flesh? These things are just a small sample of the strange things that Christians see as common sense. These things that, in my opinion, only seem that way because of their immersion in a culture that blindly believes it. I mean, kind of, if you really think about it, if you'd never heard any of these stories before, if you didn't hear them since you were a little kid over and over again, this would be some weird, weird shit. There's nothing common sense about it at all. And I mean this even if it's totally true, if it was totally proven. This is weird stuff. The story of the Bible is often called by believers the greatest story ever told. I would like to add to this by saying that it is also, and perhaps more accurately stated, to be the greatest story ever believed, not to mention the strangest.